I live in Florida, and this incident happened about 3 weeks after Hurricane Irma, so not that long ago. Back in July, the ex and I had just finalized the divorce, and I moved into a gated neighborhood where every house was rented out by the same rental company. It's a very small neighborhood with about 15 houses tops. All 15 houses are bordered around a man-made lake, with the backyards facing the lake. No one really has a fenced backyard. When you walk out the back door, you see the lake in front of you and your neighbor's backyard on each side of you. Everyone in the neighborhood seemed very close. Someone was always hosting a family-friendly party, barbecue, or having people over to watch sports. I was still depressed about my divorce, so I never partook in these social gatherings. The only person I got to know was my next-door neighbor, Steve, an active Navy soldier with a huge love for guns. My daughter, Alice, was 4 years old, and I would get her every weekend. Alice's bedroom window faces the backyard towards the lake. I spoil that girl to death. She truly is my everything, and I count down the days to the weekend every week just to be with her. That's why I was upset when Irma came, because I had to go almost 3 weekends without seeing her. On the weekend before the storm, she was with her grandma, so she was stuck there for the entire hurricane. The humidity was so bad that week that I slept in my daughter's room every night because her room was the only one with a window that faced the lake. I opened up the window, exposing just the window screen, so the wind from the lake could cool the room as much as possible while I slept. Eventually, the power came back on and the hurricane was on its way out, so Alice started visiting me again like normal. That was when the nightmares started. My daughter would complain about the singing lady and how she doesn't like her anymore. I thought maybe she was referring to one of my ex's friends, or maybe one of her teachers at school. That Saturday night, Alice woke up in the middle of the night screaming bloody murder. I ran into the room and turned on the light, and found her hiding under the covers. I asked her what was wrong, and all she could do was point to an empty corner of her room and say, "Look, look." There was nothing there. She was acting as if she saw a ghost. After I calmed her down, she started talking about the singing lady again. "Please tell the singing lady not to come back. Please, Dad. Make her go away." Obviously, she was having nightmares. I showed her there was nothing in the closet and nothing under the bed, and that there was nothing to be afraid of. She calmed down after that and went back to sleep shortly after, so I went to bed and fell asleep. It couldn't have been more than 20 minutes before Alice came running into my room screaming, "She's back, she's back." Alice absolutely refused to go back to her room, so I let her sleep with me. The next morning, I took Alice out to breakfast, and we stopped by Target to pick up a baby monitor. I hadn't used one since her mom and I were still married, but I wanted to be easily able to hear her if she started having these nightmares again, so I could respond quicker. After I set them up, I showed Alice how they worked to give her assurance that I could hear her and that she was safe. That night, she slept soundly and didn't make a single peep. The following weekend, Alice had to stay with her mother again because she caught a stomach virus from one of her little friends at school. It was Saturday night, and I was sound asleep in my bed. Around 2 a.m., I heard it. A woman's voice humming a soft nursery rhyme through the baby monitor. The humming and soft singing got louder and clearer as the voice got closer to the monitor. I wasn't dreaming. I was listening to a woman softly singing lullabies in my daughter's bedroom. I had never been so scared and dumbfounded in my life. I was feeling a mixture of pure terror and disbelief. Then the voice spoke out. "Alice, sweetie, are you awake?" Adrenaline shot through my veins. I jumped out of bed and locked my bedroom door. I picked up my cell and called Steve from next door. He didn't waste a second. As soon as I got off the phone with him, I heard him storm out of his back door screaming, "Don't move." I ran outside and found him aiming his shotgun at a woman crouched outside my daughter's window, the one I had left open after Irma and never closed. Steve quickly dropped his guard when he recognized the woman. It was Jean, the neighborhood maintenance woman. Steve's wife came running out after him and confirmed it was her. Jean played dumb. She said she was not singing and didn't even know my daughter's name. She said she was near my daughter's window because she was doing her weekly patrol for gators and thought she saw one approaching our house from the lake. That was total crap. That lady was singing, and she called out to my daughter by name. Yes, it's true that there have been a few gator spottings around the neighborhood, and yes, part of Jean's job was to patrol the lake every now and then, but at 2 a.m., I obviously knew it was BS, and even though neither Steve or his wife called her out on it, I could tell from the look on their faces that they didn't believe her either. Each year around this time, I open up my Time Hop app, and I'm reminded of a night 3 years ago. Photos of softball-sized black and blue bruises all over the right side of my body come up. I'm honestly somewhat thankful for that though, because it could have been much worse. 3 years ago, after a blackout Wednesday night with my friends, I found myself locked out of my boyfriend's apartment around 3 a.m. He was out with coworkers doing the same after his serving shift ended. We live in a big city, so I had taken the train from where the night ended with my friends straight to his place and decided I'd just wait for him rather than heading back home, as the commute would have been another half hour or so, and my phone was dying. I was honestly just ready to sleep. In hindsight, I definitely should have just headed to my own apartment that night. After multiple texts and phone calls from me asking him to come home, my boyfriend, being thoroughly annoyed with me, was not in any rush to end his night. Drunk and upset, I sat inside the entrance gate of his apartment community and sulked. It was raining and cold, and I was exhausted. Putting myself in this situation alone was my parents' worst nightmare, but at this point, my phone was dead. I didn't have enough cab money, and there was no way in hell I was walking 15 minutes back to the train to head to my own apartment. A few minutes later, a man in a ski mask, sunglasses, and an oversized parka walked up to me. I remember him so vividly asking, "Are you okay?" I responded that I was fine and to please stay away from me. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I thought for a split second he was genuinely concerned. I mean, here I was, a college-aged girl, sitting outside in the rain at 3 a.m., completely alone. But at 3 a.m., you don't just approach a girl dressed like that and mean no harm. He then brandished an X-Acto knife, then asked, "You sure you're okay?" He picked me up with one hand while repeatedly striking at the back of my hood with the knife. All I could do was scream. I know I asked him why he was doing this, but I couldn't even bring myself to pull out the mace in my coat pocket. I was so stunned. Talk about fight, flight, or freeze. I don't know if it was a car that drove by or my screaming that caused him to stop, but after the longest 30 or so seconds of my life, he threw me to the ground and ran, leaving me with those awful aforementioned bruises. I'll be forever grateful for the thick hood of my coat that took tons of knife cuts. Had my hood not been cut up, he without a doubt would have sliced the back of my neck and head. My boyfriend pulled up in a cab a few minutes later, or at least I thought it was a few minutes. It was really a blur. I definitely went into a state of shock. We called 911 from his charged phone and stayed awake for the police to come take down a report, but didn't hear much else afterward. There's a decent amount of crime in my city, so I wasn't really expecting much to come of it. What scares me the most is that, 1, I still don't know what that man wanted. 2, he knows what I look like and I have absolutely no idea what he looks like. And 3, I'm pretty certain I was followed all the way from the transit station to the apartment complex, which was a fairly long walk. Those 3 reasons still give me chills. When I was in high school, around 15 or 16, I used to go on walks around the neighborhood across the street because it was a gated community with nice sidewalks and interesting trails. The way that this neighborhood was set up was that it has a long main road that eventually turns into a huge cul-de-sac, with smaller roads branching out along the way that are all connected to each other. It should also be said that I unfortunately got a lot of unwanted attention from older men, but this is the first time I felt truly scared because I was alone. Back to the story, it was summer in Florida, so it was quite hot. I was wearing shorts, a plain neon green shirt, and flip-flops, a typical casual summer outfit for a teenage girl. I set off on my walk, enjoying the summer breeze and listening to music. As I made my way up the main road, passing the side streets, a landscaping truck with an attached trailer drove by. I thought nothing of it due to the fact that these trucks were everywhere, because this neighborhood was full of wealthy people who all hired landscaping services to maintain their lawns. I saw him turn right onto the next street up, so I was still thinking nothing of it. As I passed the street he pulled onto, I couldn't see him up the road. After walking a bit further though, I would see him idling on the next side street that connected to the main road I was on, and he appeared to be looking down the road in my direction. This neighborhood is pretty confusing for someone who doesn't live there, since all the houses look alike, and he was probably just lost. He was still idling there when I came up on that street, so I crossed in front of his truck and continued on my way. After I passed him, I heard him start to drive up behind me, and I made eye contact with him as he passed. He was looking right at me, making bobbing head movements and licking his lips. At this point, I stopped making excuses for him and started to feel uneasy. I then saw him make another right onto the next street, so I was hoping that would be the end of it. When I reached the end of the street, because he was sitting there idling by the stop sign, just like before, I contemplated what I should do, because he was clearly just taking the interconnecting roads, so he could keep driving past me and keep track of where I was going. I was still hopeful that he'd find the house he was supposed to be working at and stop following me, but when he did this weird side street leering parade another few times, I was officially terrified. I stopped walking and considered my options. I could turn around and walk home, but the only way back was to walk back down the long main road, and there was nowhere to hide if he noticed I was no longer walking into the neighborhood and turned around. As you get closer to the front of the subdivision, the houses become more and more sparse. I considered knocking on one of the house's doors, but I couldn't see anyone in their yards or any lights on inside. Oddly enough, I was scared of coming across as a creep by knocking on strangers' doors until someone answered me. I also thought about calling my mom, but this was back in the day when all I had was a huge Nokia phone for emergencies only, and I figured my mom would get mad at me for making her come pick her up for something stupid. I also thought about calling the police, but I assumed they wouldn't take me seriously. All of this is obviously irrational now, but I was panicking. So, after standing there, crying with my phone in my hand, I saw him again. He must have gotten tired waiting for me to walk by again, so he came looking for me. He drove by the opposite end of the road from me, took a U-turn to drive past me, then turned down the side street again, all while doing that creepy head-nodding look, except now he was doing it with much more energy and creepiness. I figured right then that it was time to make a break for it. While he was still looping around the side streets, I turned around and booked it, trying to run in my flip-flops while also crying. I ran until I felt like I was going to pass out, because the temperature outside was still super high. I checked behind me, and the creep wasn't there, so I rested for a bit and continued to walk, checking over my shoulder every time I heard an approaching car. I made it home safely, but I've never told my mom because I was afraid she'd either think I was being dramatic or not allow me to go on my walks anymore. If I could do it all over again, I'd call my mom in a heartbeat and take the information for the landscaping company on the guy's truck and call in a complaint.